Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep today into the world of con artists, why people fall for their schemes, the whole thing.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, we're really lucky you shared the confidence game with us. That Maria Konnikova, she gets it.
She really does.
Our listeners are smart. They're not here for the surface level, just famous cases. They want to understand the how, the why.
Exactly. They want to go deeper.
So we're going to go beyond just the headlines.
Absolutely.
We're talking about the psychology, the mechanics of it all. Why do people get conned? And how can we maybe not get conned ourselves?
Big questions.
And one thing that surprised me reading the book, it's not always about some evil genius mastermind.
Right, yeah.
It's often a lot more about opportunity.
Opportunity.
Psychology, too.
Oh, absolutely.
I think about that story of Ferdinand Waldo de Mara, the great imposter, right? This guy, he pretends to be a surgeon in the Canadian Navy.
Wow.
No medical training. None whatsoever.
How did he pull that off?
I know, right? He even performed surgeries.
Seriously?
And was hailed a hero.
Unbelievable.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah, that's a wild one.
Shows you, these con artists, they're good at, sizing up a situation.
Taking advantage.
And then they're masters at justifying what they do, making it seem okay, even when it's obviously not.
Oh, yeah. The rationalization is key.
So I guess what I'm getting at is there's not a con artist starter kit,
Right.
It's not like they're all born with a specific personality or super high IQ.
Not necessarily.
But
yeah,
there are some common threads, right?
There are. Konnikova mentions this thing called the dark triad.
Ooh, that sounds ominous.
It is a little bit. It's psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism.
So a lack of empathy,
Yep.
Inflated sense of self-importance,
Uh-huh.
and being manipulative to get what you want.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember, these traits, they're not a guarantee someone's going to become a con artist.
Right.
They're common in some con artists, sure, but not all of them.
So it's more nuanced than that.
Definitely. And, a lot of people, they have some degree of these traits. Doesn't mean they're going to go out and scam people.
Right. We all have our moments.
It's a combination of things, the rationalization, the opportunity. It's complex.
Okay, so it's not like a checklist. If you have these 3 traits, watch out.
Oh, not that simple.
But those traits, if they're there, they could make it easier to,
To cross that line.
justify doing something wrong.
To take advantage.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've talked about the con artist side a bit.
Right.
But what about the people who get conned?
The victims?
Yeah, a lot of people, I think, they have this idea of the gullible victim, right?
Someone naive, easily fooled.
Yeah, not very smart.
Right.
But the book says that's not really the case.
Not at all.
Anyone can get conned.
Anyone.
Under the right circumstances.
Right. It often boils down to emotional vulnerability, not intelligence.
So it's not about being book smart or street smart. It's about your emotional state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Con artists are really good at reading people, figuring out what they want, what they're afraid of, and then using that against them.
They can sense when someone's vulnerable?
In a way, yeah.
Yeah.
They often target people going through big life changes, divorce, job loss, grief.
Times when you're not thinking straight.
Right. Your judgment might be clouded.
You're looking for answers, for hope.
And that's when they swoop in, promising easy solutions, a quick fix.
This reminds me of that case of Deborah Saalfield, the dancer.
Oh, yeah.
She was conned out of thousands of dollars by this psychic, Sylvia Mitchell.
Heartbreaking case.
She just lost her job and her boyfriend. She was devastated.
Vulnerable.
And Mitchell, she just preyed on that grief, promising to clear negative energy for a hefty fee.
Taking advantage of someone at their lowest point.
It's a scary reminder that when we're hurting, we need to be extra careful who we trust.
Absolutely. And there are so many examples like that, unfortunately. The Madon family, for instance.
What happened to them?
They were grieving a loss, seeking guidance.
Makes sense.
And they ended up putting their faith in this self-proclaimed holy man, Boutnef.
Oh, no.
He gave them comfort, told them what they wanted to hear.
But it was all a lie.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah.
He was manipulating their belief for his own gain.
So the takeaway is we got to be aware of our own vulnerabilities.
Yes.
And have a healthy dose of skepticism, especially when things seem too good to be true.
Especially then. Now let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the actual mechanics of a con. How it unfolds.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that. So it's not just random chaos. There's an actual system.
There is. Maria Konnikova, she lays out 6 psychological stages in her book. like a playbook that con artists follow.
Ooh, I like this. Give us the inside scoop.
All right, so stage 1 is called the put-up.
Put up. Okay, what's that all about?
This is where the con artists, they're identifying their potential victim, profiling them, figuring out their personality, desires, weaknesses.
So like a detective almost.
Kind of, yeah. Observing behavior, body language.
It reminds me of Apollo Robbins, the gentleman thief.
Oh, yeah, the pickpocket.
He's a master at this, right? He's not just randomly bumping into people, hoping to snag a wallet.
No, he's very intentional.
He's using psychology to choose his targets, observing them.
Absolutely, a master of observation. He's pinpointing who's vulnerable, distracted, less likely to notice.
So step 1 is all about profiling the target, sizing them up.
Exactly. Then comes the play.
Okay, what happens in the play?
This is where the con artist focuses on building trust and rapport.
Ah, so like making the victim feel comfortable?
Right. They might mirror your body language, use familiarity cues, share a compelling backstory, anything to create that sense of connection.
It's like that old saying, you can catch more flies with honey than with vinegar.
Exactly. Make them feel like they're in good hands, dealing with someone they can trust.
Or with their guard.
Precisely. And once that trust is established, it's onto the rope.
Rope. Okay, this is where the actual con comes in, right?
This is it. The rope is all about presenting the scheme, making it irresistible.
So how do they do that? Make it irresistible, I mean.
Well, they exploit our psychological vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
They might use scarcity, like this is a limited time offer.
Oh, yeah, the fear of missing out.
Exactly. Or they might leverage authority, name-dropping experts or institutions to add credibility.
So like this was recommended by so-and-so, or this is backed by such and such organization.
Exactly. And then there's social proof, showing you testimonials, examples of others who've supposedly benefited from the scheme.
So you see other people doing it, you think, oh, it must be legit.
Right. It plays on our tendency to follow the crowd. And they're good at using persuasive techniques too, like the door in the face or the low ball.
Wait, those sound familiar. Can you refresh my memory on those?
Sure. The door in the face technique, they start with a huge request, something they know you'll say no to. Then they follow up with a smaller, more reasonable request.
So it's like, hey, can you donate $1 million to my cause?
Exactly. And when you say no, they hit you with, okay, how about just $10 then?
And you're more likely to say yes because you feel bad for already saying no.
Right. You want to be helpful. You feel a little guilty. The lowball technique is different. They start with an amazing deal, something super attractive.
Okay, so you get hooked on the idea.
Right. But then once you're invested, they change the terms, make the deal less appealing.
Oh, sneaky.
But they're counting on you not wanting to back out, because you've already agreed in principle.
So you end up going along with it, even though it's not what you originally signed up for.
Yep. These are just some of the ways they can make the rope irresistible, pull you in.
Wow, these are some seriously devious tactics.
Yeah.
Can you give me a real-world example of this rope stage in action, like how it might play out?
Imagine someone offering you this amazing investment opportunity. Guaranteed high returns. They show you fake testimonials from satisfied investors, and they're pressuring you to act fast before the offer expires.
Ah, so they're hitting you with scarcity, social proof, and urgency all at once.
Exactly. It's a powerful combination. Very effective at luring people in.
Okay, so we've got the put up, the play, the rope. What comes next?
The tail. This is where they weave a story.
A story.
Yeah, a compelling narrative to reinforce the scheme.
Like a backstory.
More than that. It's about feeding into the mark's desires and beliefs. Think of it as the glue that holds the whole con together.
Ah, I see. Like that story of the Drake Estate con.
Oh, perfect example. That one went on for centuries. People were convinced they were heirs to Sir Francis Drake's fortune.
And it was all a lie.
All a lie. But the story, the promise of wealth, and a connection to this legendary figure, it was so powerful, it kept people hooked for generations.
Wow. Shows you the power of a good story, huh? Even if it's completely made up.
Absolutely. It can override logic and reason, make people believe things that are demonstrably false.
Okay, so the con artist has identified their target, built trust, presented the scheme, and woven a tale. What happens next?
The next stage is the breakdown. This is where they handle any objections, any doubts the victim might have.
Ah, so this is where they really have to work their magic, huh?
You could say that. They have to tap into our cognitive biases, those mental shortcuts our brains use.
Biases, aren't those supposed to be helpful?
They can be, in some situations, but they can also lead us to make irrational decisions. And con artists know how to exploit that.
So these biases are working against us, even though they're supposed to be helping us.
Exactly. Take the sunk cost fallacy, for example.
Okay, what's that one?
It's that feeling of, I've come this far, I can't give up now, even when it doesn't make sense to keep going.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely felt that before, like with a project at work or something.
Exactly. And con artists, they use that. They remind you of all the time, money, effort you've already invested, making it harder to walk away.
It's like they're holding your past investments hostage.
In a way, yeah. And then there's confirmation bias.
What's that one do?
It's our tendency to seek out information that confirms our existing beliefs, even if those beliefs are wrong.
So, like, if we want to believe something is true, we'll ignore any evidence that says otherwise.
Unfortunately, yes. And this makes us more susceptible to accepting the con artist's version of events, even when things don't add up.
This reminds me of James Franklin Norfleet, the rancher who fell for the magic wallet scam twice.
Oh, wow, twice.
Yeah. He was convinced the scheme worked, even after being scammed the first time.
Classic example of confirmation bias. He'd seen proof that supported his belief,
Yeah.
so he discounted any evidence to the contrary.
It's crazy how our own brains can work against us like that.
It is.
Right.
And the breakdown stage is all about keeping the victim hooked, even as doubts start to creep in.
Okay, so they're using our own psychology against us. This is getting deep.
It is. And it leads us to the final stages of the con. The send, the touch, the blow-off, and the fix.
All right, this is where things get really interesting. Break it down for me. What happens in each of these stages?
The send is, well, it's when the con artist really turns up the pressure.
Pressure to do what?
To invest more. Often they'll frame it as a way to recoup losses or, really maximize those gains, create that sense of urgency.
Like, this is your last chance.
Exactly. This opportunity, it's about to vanish.
Oh, so they're playing on FOMO, the fear of missing out.
Big time. And then the touch, it's the moment of truth.
The moment of truth for who?
For the con artist, I mean. This is when they disappear, vanish with the victim's money.
Oof. Gone.
Yep. Leaving the victim with, nothing but shattered dreams and a whole lot of confusion and probably some denial, too.
I bet. It's like the whole world you thought you knew just imploding.
Exactly. It's a harsh reality check. And then the blow-off and the fix, that's all about damage control for the con artist, I mean.
Damage control.
Yeah, they got to protect themselves. Sometimes they'll resort to threats, intimidation, to keep the victim quiet.
Whoa, seriously.
Yep. Or they might play on a victim's shame, make them feel too embarrassed to go to the authorities.
So the very same tactics they used to lure the victim in, now they're using them to keep them quiet?
Sadly, that's often the case. And it's effective, The victim doesn't speak up, the con artist gets away with it, and the cycle continues.
Man, that's messed up. But, it still makes me wonder, why do we fall for it in the first place? It can't just be about being stupid, right?
No, not at all. It goes back to those cognitive biases we were talking about earlier. They play a huge role in making us vulnerable, not just to con artists, but in everyday life.
Wait, so you're saying these biases are always working in the background, influencing our decisions, even when we're not being scammed?
Absolutely. They're like these little mental shortcuts our brains use to process information, make quick judgments.
Okay, but how does that play out in real life? Like, outside of a con?
Think about confirmation bias, for example.
The one where you only look for information that supports what you already believe.
That's the one. We see this all the time in politics. People get stuck in these echo chambers, only consuming news that aligns with their views.
Oh, yeah, like on social media. You just see what you want to see.
Exactly. And it makes it really hard to change your mind, even when presented with facts that contradict your beliefs.
So how does that tie back to cons?
Well, remember James Franklin Norfleet? The rancher who fell for that magic wallet scam twice?
Oh, yeah, him.
He was so convinced the scheme worked that he ignored all the red flags, even after being scammed the first time. He was looking for evidence to confirm his belief, not challenge it.
Wow, so it's like our brains are actually working against us, making us blind to the truth.
In a way, yeah. We're wired to protect our beliefs even when they're wrong, and con artists know how to exploit that. And then there's optimism bias.
Optimism bias, what's that one about?
That's our tendency to overestimate the likelihood of good things happening to us while underestimating the bad.
So we all think we're going to win the lottery.
Well, not exactly. But we do tend to have this, rosy outlook on life. We think good things are more likely to happen to us than to others.
Interesting. But how does that play into a con?
Con artists, they play on that. They promise wealth, success, happiness, things we all want. And because of optimism bias, we're more likely to believe them, even if the promises seem too good to be true.
It's like they're dangling a carrot in front of us and we can't help but reach for it. And then there's the sunk cost fallacy, which we touched on earlier.
Right, the feeling that you've already invested so much, you can't back out now. Con artists use this to their advantage, constantly reminding you of what you've already put in, making it harder to walk away.
So we're basically trapped by our own past decisions.
In a way, yeah. It's a powerful psychological tool.
Man, this whole discussion about cognitive biases is really eye-opening. It's like our own minds can be our biggest enemies when it comes to cons.
They can be. But the good news is, awareness is key. Once we understand these biases, how they work, we can start to protect ourselves.
Okay, so awareness is step one. But how do we actually do that? How do we protect ourselves from these biases, from these con artists who seem to know exactly how our brains work?
Well, it starts with understanding that we're all vulnerable. Even the smartest, most skeptical among us can fall prey to these tactics.
So no one is immune. Got it.
Right. From there, it's about cultivating healthy skepticism, especially when it comes to money, investments, big promises. Ask questions, seek independent verification, and don't be afraid to challenge authority.
Don't just take their word for it.
Exactly. And trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
Easier said than done sometimes, though, right? Especially when you're caught up in the moment.
It is, but it's important to remember, you have the power to say no, to walk away. Your financial and emotional well-being are worth protecting.
Absolutely. This has been a really insightful discussion. We've covered a lot of ground: the psychology of the con artist, the biases that make us vulnerable, the devastating impact of these schemes. It's clear that knowledge is power when it comes to this stuff.
100%. Understanding how cons work is the best way to protect ourselves and others. Spot those warning signs, question our assumptions, resist those easy answers.
Yeah, and it's been fascinating to unpack the confidence game with you. Maria Konnikova, she really lays it all out there. These stories, they seem so outlandish sometimes, but they have so much relevance to our everyday lives.
They do. It's a reminder that con artists are out there, they're real, and they're always looking for new ways to exploit our vulnerabilities.
So we got to stay vigilant.
We do. But remember, we're not powerless. Knowledge is power. Awareness is key.
So to our listener out there, keep your eyes open, your skepticism sharp, and your mind engaged.
And never underestimate the power of a good story, especially when it comes to protecting yourself from those who might use it against you.
That's a great point. Now that you've got a deeper understanding of cons, think about your own life. Can you spot any examples of these tactics?
You might be surprised how prevalent they are, not just in scams, but in advertising, marketing, even in our personal interactions.
That's something to think about. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of con artists. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay safe. Welcome back, everyone. Now, before the break, we were getting into some pretty intense stuff about how con artists actually seal the deal, like how they get away with it.
Yeah, it gets pretty dark.
It does, but I think it's important we talk about it, so people can understand how these things really work. So let's go back to those final stages: the send, the touch, the blow off, and the fix. What are we looking at here?
Well, by this point, the victim is, they're hooked. They've bought into the con.
Yeah.
They've probably even rationalized away any doubts or red flags.
It's like they're in too deep.
Right, exactly. They're trapped. And that's when the send comes in. This is when the con artist, they push for that final investment. They want everything.
Oh, so they're going for the kill.
Pretty much. They might say something like, this is your last chance to get in on this incredible deal.
Don't miss out.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
This opportunity, it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
They prey on that fear, that what if I miss out?
Yeah, FOMO. It's powerful stuff. And then, boom, the touch. This is the moment the con artist disappears.
Vanishes into thin air.
Yep. Taking all that money with them.
And leaving the victim?
Broken, confused, probably in denial too. It's like their whole world just shattered.
Ouch. That's got to be rough. So what happens next?
Well, that's where the blow-off and the fix come in.
Yep.
This is all about the con artist covering their tracks, protecting themselves.
Protecting themselves.
Yeah. They don't want to get caught. So sometimes they'll threaten the victim, try to intimidate them into staying silent.
Seriously, yep.
Or they'll use shame, make the victim feel so embarrassed, so foolish, that they're too afraid to go to the police.
Wow. So the same tactics they used to pull the victim in, they're now using to keep them quiet?
It's a vicious cycle. And sadly, it often works. The victim stays silent, the con artist gets away with it,
Yeah.
and they move on to their next target. It's heartbreaking.
It is. So what can we do? How do we stop this from happening? How do we protect ourselves and others?
Well, it starts with awareness. Being aware of these tactics, these stages, knowing the warning signs.
Okay, so like what kind of warning signs?
Well, if someone's pressuring you to invest more, especially if they create a sense of urgency or make threats, that's a huge red flag.
So like, you got to act now or you'll miss out.
Exactly. Anytime you feel that pressure, that's a sign to step back, take a breath, and really evaluate the situation.
Don't get caught up in the hype.
Right, and trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is. Don't be afraid to ask questions, to do your own research, to walk away if things don't add up.
It's about being your own advocate, protecting yourself.
Exactly. You have the power to say no, to walk away from a bad situation. And remember, if you do find yourself caught in a con, you're not alone.
Yeah, don't be afraid to reach out for help.
Right. Report it to the authorities, talk to someone you trust, a friend, a family member. There are resources out there. Yeah. And remember, anyone can be conned. It's not a reflection of your intelligence or your worth.
Absolutely. Con artists, they're masters of manipulation. They know how to play on our emotions, our desires, our vulnerabilities. But we're not powerless.
Not at all. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
And the more we understand about how these cons work, the better equipped we are to protect ourselves.
Exactly. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of con artists. We've uncovered some pretty dark stuff, but I think it's been really eye-opening. We've learned about their tactics, the psychology behind it all, and most importantly, how to protect ourselves.
I agree. Maria Konnikova's book, The Confidence Game, it really does a fantastic job of exposing these schemes, these vulnerabilities.
It's a must-read for anyone who wants to understand this world, how it operates.
Absolutely.
So to our listeners out there, stay vigilant, stay informed, and as always, stay curious. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and please remember to subscribe to receive notification of upcoming recordings. See you in next video.